All right, let's talk about one I wanted to talk about for a while, technology and magic. Magic has sort of always been a very high-tech environment ever since antiquities, and now what I will say is in magic, artifacts aren't always technology, so to speak, because a lot of them is magical artifacts, not really engineered artifacts, which I'm going to make a distinction about here. There's some blending of the two, especially with power sources in magic. But let's dive in with a look at all the high-tech societies in magic. So the first and most important one, arguably, is the Thran. The Thran were sort of a precursor civilization on Dominaria. They got a visual update in Dominaria 2018, where all of their artifacts look like steel and gold, basically. But they were an incredibly advanced civilization that had a lot of different artifacts, and their megaliths are scattered all over Dominaria. They fell to a populist con man named Yawgmoth, who I'll get into in a bit because he has a lot to do with one of the other majorly advanced civilizations in magic. But yeah, Thran ruins are all over the plane. After the fall of the Thran, Dominaria went back to being sort of a low-tech society until Urza and Mishra uncovered a lot of ancient secrets and had the Brothers' War. And during that war, the technology ramped up and ramped up. They reinvented sky ships, they fixed an ornithopter and created fleets of them, they created giant mech suits. Like, the scale of technology during the war was incredible. And they both had their distinctive flavors. And in general, while it's not as common, the technology level in Dominaria in the current day is still around here, maybe even a little more advanced. And all of this technology is powered by what's called a power stone. This is a crystal of some kind that has, like, mana trapped in it. It's sort of a magical perpetual fuel source. Now, before I talk about Phyrexia, let's talk about the precursor to Phyrexia. Let's talk a little bit about the precursor to Phyrexia, too. The plane of Phyrexia, the original Phyrexia, wasn't made by Yawgmoth. Both the glistening oil and things like dragon engines were already there. And he just sort of co-opted them for his own purposes. And the glistening oil became the means of his, like, horror show. And then, of course, dragon engines got copied by Mishra during the Brothers' War. But the original Phyrexia was originally a plane of 9 nested spheres of artifact creatures that were so perfectly engineered that they were basically alive. Yawgmoth took that to create his, like, horrific vision of his Phyrexia, and along with his Thran followers, disappeared. And they worked on themselves for a long time and raided other planes using this planar portal technology that he also stole. The Thran who survived the war just sort of split up and became their own cultures, the ones that didn't go with Yawgmoth, I mean. I should also note, while Dominaria doesn't use real-to-life firearms, at one point we did have them on Dominaria. Now, there are a bunch of other planes at similar high-tech levels, maybe all not at the same place or utilized the same way. The first one I want to call out is Vryn. Vryn has these mage rings that are like ancient structures that are like barely being kept online, but they are very much high-tech methods of diverting magical power mana. I'm going to bring up Zendikar just because the lithomancers of the old core empire created like Death Stars and things, but that was more magical skyclave than like technological. A big one to note is that from the very beginning, Ravnica was a fairly high-tech society. The Izzet, while it's not usually shown on cards, are artificers and inventors. A lot of that has gone into the infrastructure that makes a city like this work, but we see they have the engineering chops too. We see it throughout a bunch of different sets, like this is a street sweeper on Ravnica. This is just your average Izzet, like, exploding thing. Just before War of the Spark, Dovin Bun brought Thopter technology. And we know that they're capable of lots of different things, like there's a Dimir submarine. The Parhelion is this massive, this one isn't really engineered, it's like half engineered, half magic, a giant skyship floating fortress. But you know, we see these fairly advanced inventions. Look at the engineering on this guy. Or this guy. And they also have things like subways and skyships and other methods of getting around, both highly technological and pretty basic. They still have horse-drawn carts. One that I see get brought up a lot is Mirrodin, but Mirrodin isn't really technological. Everything here is sort of like magically animated artifice. Now, when New Phyrexia takes over, that changes a bit, and some of the societies on Mirrodin might have had more tech chops than others. For instance, the Vidalcan. But in general, it was more of a metal world than an artifact world. We don't see a lot of Kylum, that plane from Battle Bond, but we do know they have like hard light technology. It gets used in a bunch of their weapons. And then in Ether Spark, we see it get used for these sort of Tron light cycle devices. And that they have pretty impressive skyships of their own. Speaking of Ether Drift, Avishkar is a plane that is very, very high-tech. A lot of it looks sort of steampunky in a way, but this is a very engineered plane. There is no magically created artifacts here. Everything here is engineered and then powered by ether. That's their primary fuel source. That's what they collect from the atmosphere, basically, and then they store in these big tanks and pipe down for people to use. But they have cars, they have mech suits, they have everything we would think of in a modern society. Fiora, while Renaissance Italy in theme, does have some technology. It's mostly like cogwork stuff Leonardo da Vinci would have only dreamed about. Arcavios, the plane where Strixhaven is, also has a very high level of technology. You don't see a ton of it, but you can see an example here in the Cogwork Archivist. Given they're a very magic forward plane, I feel like they're part engineered, part magic tech. Of course, when we return to Kamigawa, they had a very cyberpunk level of technology, magic cyberpunk, I guess. And it's also all very well engineered, and it's powered off like Kami and Kami Realm energy. During Ether Drift, we also encountered the Guidelight Voyagers, who are straight up robots with very advanced looking vehicles. We don't know where they're from yet. We also encountered the End Riders, who are from a plane that had a very high level of technology based on their vehicles. Sort of a Mad Max level of technology. They're post-apocalyptic. And the Keel Haulers also come from a plane where they have like jet technology. Capenna has a vaguely 1920s level of technology. They have flying cars, they have jackhammers, they have everything you would expect to see in a major metropolitan area in the US in the early 20th century. And then, of course, there's Duskmorn, which is another post-apocalyptic level of advanced technology, where the End Riders also sort of had like 70s, 80s level technology, because, again, Mad Max influence. Duskmorn does as well. A lot of it is sort of cobbled together. We don't know how much of this really existed before Duskmorn took over, but obviously they had a fair amount of technology. It's not all one-to-one with what the 1980s had, but it's meant to evoke that sort of imagery. You can see there are lots of other doodads and things happening here. And a lot of it, while it evokes the same shape language, it's obviously, this isn't just a metal tube, there's like magical stuff, conduits running through this glimmer light. Now, I know a lot of people bounced hard off this, but personally, I don't think it's any worse than like Kamigawa's level of technology or Avishkar's level of technology. It's just the shape language is closer to what we'd have in real life, even though it's like the same kind of tech they would have on multiple other planes Magic has. A lot of people got hung up on chainsaw, but a chainsaw is like an old invention. Like even in Magic, we had one back in the 90s at least. During the Brothers' War, they used chainsaws on Argive. One last one I want to call out is Esper, which is sort of like Arcavios. It's like 50% magically animated things by incorporating Ethereum, and another 50% engineered things like the Thopters. So it's like half magically animated artifacts and like half engineered artifacts. But that about covers tech levels in Magic. Let me know what you want to hear about next.